Kieran Voss had learned early that the world did not care for his scars. The jagged lines crossing his face and arms were more than reminders of old battles, they were signs of weakness. At least in the eyes of those who had never fought. On the human colony of Eris 7, on the edge of the galaxy, humans were already seen as fragile creatures. They were small, slow, and clumsy, compared to the towering, sleek, and technologically advanced aliens who patrolled the colony. And Kieran, with his battle-worn body and scarred face, was the easiest target. He moved through the crowded streets of the central hub, his boots clanging against the metal walkways. Alien citizens passed him without acknowledgement. And those that did look his way did so with curiosity, disgust, or pity. A group of tall, four-armed Rylaxians warriors from the Confederation snickered as he walked past. "Look at that human," one of them hissed in their harsh, clicking language. "Do they even survive the simplest fight?" Kieran ignored them, though a small part of him ached. The whispers and sneers had been part of his life for decades. His scars were a story he could not erase, and the world seemed to delight in reminding him of every one. He arrived at the training grounds, a large dome built to withstand the harsh storms of Eris 7. Inside, humans trained alongside alien recruits, though the humans were always treated as second-class participants. Kieran's eyes scanned the arena. His body ached from old injuries, his left leg had never healed completely after a mining accident, and his right arm carried the faint memory of a plasma burn, but he pushed the pain aside. "Still late, Voss," grumbled Commander Thalra, a Rylaxian officer who often supervised human recruits. Her forearms folded across her broad chest, and her amber eyes seemed to pierce through him. "I'm on time," Kieran replied evenly, his voice steady. He did not flinch under her gaze, though he had learned long ago that showing fear was dangerous. Thalra's lips curled in amusement. "On time, maybe, but not strong enough to matter. Your scars will not carry you through the trials. You will fall." Kieran clenched his fists, feeling the familiar rush of anger. But he held it in. Words were easy. Action was everything. He turned to the training arena, where automated combat dummies moved in unpredictable patterns. Humans had to adapt quickly. They could not rely on strength alone. Kieran began his exercises, leaping, dodging, and striking with precision. Every punch and kick was calculated, every movement efficient. Even as he trained, he felt the eyes of the aliens watching. They sneered, whispered, and shook their heads. But Kieran had learned long ago that they did not matter. The humans who had come before him had survived impossible odds, and he would be no different. After hours of training, Kieran finally paused, breathing heavily. His body was sore, his muscles screaming for rest, but his mind was sharp. Sweat dripped down his forehead, mixing with the salt of old scars. He studied himself in the reflective panels at the edge of the arena. The scars made him look fierce, perhaps even frightening, but they were also proof that he had survived. A small voice interrupted his thoughts. "You were amazing today," said Lyra, a young human recruit barely 16. Her dark hair fell over her shoulders, and her eyes shone with admiration. Kieran gave a faint smile. "It's not amazing. It's survival. You'll learn that soon enough." Lyra frowned. "The aliens. They always laugh at me. At us. How do you keep going?" Kieran crouched down to meet her eyes. "Because the galaxy doesn't care if you are small, or scarred, or slow. It only cares if you survive. And if you survive, you can change the world." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. She had seen the sneers and the cruelty, but seeing Kieran's determination sparked something in her. Something stubborn. Something unyielding. The next day, the announcement came. A galaxy-wide combat trial was being held. It was designed to test strength, skill, and intelligence. The Confederation called it the Eclipse Challenge. A trial meant to showcase the superiority of the alien warriors and humiliate the humans further. Kieran heard the announcement and felt a spark of something he had not felt in years: hope. Not for glory, but for proof. Proof that humans were not weak. Proof that scars were not marks of failure. Proof that even a single human could stand tall against the galaxy's most formidable species. The trial would be held on Tyrannus Station, a massive orbital facility with zero-gravity arenas, plasma fields, and obstacle courses designed to kill. Kieran knew the odds were against him. Humans were not designed to compete against the likes of Rylaxians, or the fleet-footed Kirels, or the telepathic Vinorians. But he also knew one thing. The galaxy had never faced a human who refused to quit. He began preparing in secret, rising before dawn to train, studying alien combat tactics, and creating strategies the Confederation could never anticipate. He used his scars as reminders not of weakness, but of survival. Each one told a story. The mine collapse on Targos 5, the skirmish with space pirates near Epsilon 1-2, the brutal combat in the mining colonies. Each one was a lesson, a memory of endurance. Weeks passed, and Kieran's reputation among the aliens changed slowly, subtly. Whispers replaced sneers, as word of his skill and resilience spread. The humans in the colony began looking to him with newfound respect. Even Commander Thalra observed him differently, her amber eyes narrowing in curiosity rather than scorn. But not everyone welcomed this change. The leading alien warriors, prideful and arrogant, saw Kieran as a threat to their superiority. They plotted to humiliate him publicly during the preliminary trials. He would be forced to navigate a course of extreme physical and mental challenges, with every step designed to exploit human weakness. Kieran did not flinch. He trained harder, running simulations of every possible scenario, mapping every route, memorizing the behavior of automated drones, and learning the weaknesses of alien combat suits. His human mind, sharp and flexible, became his greatest weapon. The day before the trials, Kieran walked through the colony's central square. He passed by a statue of the Confederation's greatest warrior, a symbol of alien dominance. Children of all species played around it, unaware of the growing tension in the galaxy. Kieran paused, his hand brushing against the cold metal of the statue. "They don't see us," he whispered. "They think we are weak. But they don't know what it means to survive as a human." Nearby, Lyra watched him, her eyes wide. "You'll show them, won't you?" she asked. Kieran smiled faintly. "I will. Not for myself, for all of us." As night fell over Eris 7, Kieran sat alone in his quarters, examining his scars in the dim light. Some were old, faded, almost invisible. Others were deep, angry lines that never fully healed. They were painful to touch, painful to remember. But they were also his history, his proof of survival. He clenched his fists. Tomorrow, he would step onto the platform of the Eclipse Challenge. The galaxy would sneer, doubt, and laugh. But when the trial began, and when the impossible choices came, the humans would see something new. Courage, determination, and resilience no species could predict. And Kieran would show them all that a human warrior, scarred and outcast, could shape the destiny of the galaxy. The day of the Eclipse Challenge dawned cold and gray on Eris 7. Though the orbital station above the colony glowed with artificial sunlight, thousands of spectators from across the galaxy would watch. Their eyes set on the trials, eager to see humans fail. Kieran Voss stood at the edge of the launch platform, his scars gleaming faintly in the artificial light. He adjusted his armor, checking each strap, each joint. The lightweight human combat suit was no match for the bulky alien exosuits, but it gave him agility, a strength few others would consider. He glanced around the platform. Towering Rylaxians, nimble Kirels, and sleek Venorians all prepared beside him. Each one exuded confidence, each one certain that the human would crumble. A voice echoed over the station's intercom, amplified for all participants. "Welcome to the Eclipse Challenge. Only the strongest, fastest, and smartest will survive. Remember, failure is final." The words were meant to intimidate. They always were. But Kieran's jaw tightened. He had faced death before, and he would face it again if necessary. His scars were proof not of weakness, but of survival. The first trial was announced. a zero-gravity obstacle course designed to test balance, strength, and adaptability. Combat drones with plasma claws would patrol the course, forcing participants to dodge, climb, and fight simultaneously. The aliens smirked at Kieran. "Do you really think a human can survive this?" One Kirel sneered, twirling its slender wrist blades. Kieran's fingers brushed the edge of his suit's control panel. "We'll see," he replied quietly, calm and focused. The launch gates opened, and participants were pulled into the course by magnetic harnesses. Kieran's heart pounded, but he moved with precise control. His body, though scarred and slightly uneven from past injuries, adapted smoothly to zero gravity. He pushed off walls, grabbed handles, and spun through the air with careful, calculated movements. The drones swooped and lunged, their plasma claws cutting through the air with deadly accuracy. Many of the aliens panicked, over-relying on strength and reflexes. Kieran, however, anticipated the drones' patterns, using the drone's own momentum against them. One drone lunged at him, and he sidestepped, letting it crash into a wall. Another aimed for his legs. He twisted mid-air, grabbed a nearby cable, and swung out of danger. Spectators gasped as the scarred human navigated the course with remarkable precision. Even the other humans in the stands whispered among themselves, "He's surviving. He's actually surviving." Midway through the course, a particularly large drone attacked with enhanced sensors and speed. Kieran hesitated only for a heartbeat, then acted. Using a narrow gap between two walls, he ricocheted off, striking the drone with a magnetic pulse from his suit. Sparks flew, and the drone malfunctioned, collapsing to the floor of the course. A wave of disbelief rippled through the alien participants. Commander Thalra, watching from the control deck, leaned forward. She had always seen humans as weak, but this human, scarred, outcast, underestimated, was showing cunning that no alien had predicted. By the end of the obstacle course, Kieran had not only survived but excelled. He finished ahead of several of the larger, stronger competitors. His scars were still visible, glinting under the artificial light, a silent testament to his endurance, but survival alone was not enough. The second trial required intelligence, strategy, and quick thinking. A simulated combat scenario, where participants had to secure energy cores from a maze while avoiding automated sentries and rival combatants. Kieran studied the maze from the observation deck. Lines of laser sensors, moving walls, and hidden turrets would challenge any participant. Most aliens charged in, relying on brute strength and speed. Kieran, however, mapped the terrain carefully. He identified weak points, predicted sentry patrols, and charted a path that minimized risk while maximizing speed. The simulation began. While the alien warriors smashed through doors and walls, triggering alarms, Kieran moved silently, using shadows and gaps to his advantage. When a sentry drone appeared, he did not fight it head-on. Instead, he used a magnetic pulse to redirect it, sending it crashing into a barrier. Other participants were caught in ambushes they could not predict, while Kieran moved with a calm, calculated precision. Midway through the maze, a group of Kirels tried to corner him. He could have fought, but fighting would slow him down. Instead, he used the maze's traps to his advantage, leading them into a false corridor that activated a net barrier, temporarily immobilizing them. By the time they freed themselves, Kieran was already several steps ahead. When he finally retrieved the energy core, the alien participants were shocked. Not only had the humans survived, but he had also outsmarted their elite warriors. Whispers spread through the observation decks. "This human is something else." After the simulation, Kieran returned to the training quarters to rest. Though rest was brief, he reviewed the next challenge. A planetary terrain battle, where gravity, weather, and natural hazards would test endurance, strategy, and teamwork. He knew he could not do it alone. The aliens would never accept him as an equal. But he had seen the loyalty in the few who dared to follow him quietly. Humans like Lyra, and a small number of sympathetic alien recruits who had grown tired of the Confederation's arrogance. He approached them carefully. "We'll face the next trial together," Kieran said quietly. "It's not just about survival, it's about proving we belong. If we work together, we can outthink them, outmaneuver them, outlast them." The team nodded. Each one had scars or marks of their own, some physical, some emotional. They understood what it meant to be underestimated. They understood the power of resilience. The planetary terrain trial began on the harsh surface of Veron 3, a rocky planet with sudden storms, jagged cliffs, and hidden ravines. Kieran led his team carefully, using human ingenuity to navigate obstacles. When a sudden lightning storm struck, the alien warriors panicked, their suits malfunctioning under the electromagnetic interference. Kieran's lighter, adaptable human suit allowed him to move swiftly, guiding his team to safety. During a canyon crossing, the group was ambushed by a squad of elite Rylaxians. Kieran's team was outnumbered 3-1. Most would have fled, but Kieran stood firm. Using his scars as a reminder of past survival, he analyzed the terrain. With precise timing, he triggered a rock slide that blocked the Rylaxians' path. He used the cover to lead his team through a hidden passage, turning a trap into an advantage. By the end of the trial, Kieran's team emerged, battered but victorious. The aliens, who had mocked him at the start, now looked on with a mix of surprise and grudging respect. Even Commander Thalra's expression softened, a flicker of recognition crossing her features. Kieran, however, did not celebrate. He knew the trials were far from over. The final stages would test everything: strength, intelligence, endurance, and most importantly, courage under fire. As he returned to the station, he thought about his scars. Each one had told a story of survival, and now, each one was a story of triumph. He realized something profound. The galaxy might sneer at humans, but no species could ignore a survivor. No species could ignore courage, intelligence, and determination. That night, Kieran stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, staring at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, filled with threats, challenges, and rivals. But he also saw something else: possibility. Humans had been underestimated for centuries. But if they could survive, if they could endure, if they could fight with cleverness and courage, they could rise. And Kieran Voss, scarred and outcast, would lead the way. The galaxy had not seen the last of him, not by far. The final trial of the Eclipse Challenge was unlike anything Kieran Voss had faced before. The previous obstacles had tested speed, strength, and intelligence, but this was different. This trial would test endurance, courage, and the ability to inspire others. The galaxy's most advanced species were determined to see humans fail, and Kieran knew that their eyes were on him. Every movement, every decision would be observed, judged, and ridiculed. He stood on the edge of the massive arena aboard Tyrannus Station, which now hovered above the volcanic surface of Dracora Prime. The arena was enormous, spanning kilometers of jagged terrain, with rivers of molten lava, collapsing cliffs, and unpredictable magnetic storms. The objective was simple in theory: capture the central energy crystal at the heart of the arena. In practice, it was almost impossible. Kieran glanced at his small team. Lyra, still wide-eyed but determined. Jarek, a former alien scout who had been quietly following him through the trials, and 2 other human recruits, who had begun to see strength in unity rather than isolation. Each member of his team bore their own scars, visible or hidden, but together they formed something stronger than any single alien warrior could have anticipated. The alien participants towered over them, exuding confidence. The Rylaxians stretched 6 meters tall, their armor glinting in the molten light. The Kirels darted through the air with unnatural speed, their claws ready to strike. And the Vinorians, telepathic and calculating, whispered warnings among themselves. Certain that the humans would fall within minutes, the arena gates opened. Kieran's team moved cautiously at first, using the shadows and rocks as cover, while the larger aliens charged forward, relying on sheer speed and brute force. Kieran used every ounce of his human agility and intelligence. He anticipated ambushes, predicted environmental hazards, and guided his team with clear, calm instructions. A sudden eruption of molten rock sent a wave of lava down the eastern cliff. Kyril warriors panicked, their exosuits overheating and slowing them down. Kieran's team, lighter and more adaptable, navigated the terrain with careful precision, avoiding the deadly flow. As they approached a narrow canyon, Kieran paused. The canyon walls were unstable, covered in jagged crystals that could collapse with the slightest pressure. Ahead, he spotted a group of alien warriors attempting to cut them off. "Stay close," Kieran whispered. "Follow my lead. Don't rush." He moved first, testing the stability of the rocks with precise steps. Jarek followed, then Lyra, and finally the other humans. The alien warriors, expecting humans to falter, rushed ahead recklessly. A section of the canyon collapsed beneath them, sending several Rylaxians tumbling into the depths. The surviving aliens snarled, but they had learned their first lesson. Kieran was not a simple human to underestimate. The central energy crystal now lay within sight, but reaching it was no simple task. Between Kieran and the crystal were a series of magnetic storms that interfered with navigation and communication. Alien warriors hesitated, their bulky suits faltering. Kieran adjusted the controls of his lightweight suit, allowing his team to pass safely. "Stick together. Focus on the path, not them," he instructed. Halfway through, they were ambushed by a squad of elite Vinorians, telepathically predicting every move. Kieran had anticipated this. He split his team strategically. Two of them lured the Vinorians into a trap while he and Lyra moved forward. Using a combination of decoys and the arena's unstable terrain, the Vinorians were forced to retreat temporarily. Despite the danger, Kieran's calm determination inspired his team. Lyra moved with confidence, Jarek with precision, and the other humans discovered courage they had never known. Each step was a lesson in endurance, adaptability, and the power of leadership. As they neared the energy crystal, a massive lava flow surged unexpectedly, cutting off their path. The alien warriors advanced, assuming the humans would be trapped. Kieran scanned the terrain quickly. He spotted a narrow ridge above the lava, barely visible, connecting to the platform where the crystal rested. "Trust me," Kieran said. "We can make it." He led the team across the ridge, one careful step at a time. The heat was intense, the rocks unstable, and the slightest misstep could send them into the molten river below. Yet, with Kieran's guidance, the team moved steadily forward. Even Lyra, who had once doubted herself, now mirrored his confidence. The alien warriors followed, but with less precision. Several faltered, slipping and nearly falling into the lava. Kieran's team reached the platform first. He reached out, grasped the energy crystal, and held it high. The light from the crystal reflected off his scars, making them shine almost like armor. The arena fell silent for a moment. The galaxy's most advanced warriors were stunned. A human not only surviving but thriving had claimed the prize. Kieran had turned what others saw as weakness into a demonstration of human resilience, intelligence, and courage. But the trial was not over. The final test required more than skill, it demanded moral courage. The arena's central control projected a hologram. Hostages, innocent civilians trapped in the far end of the arena, threatened by a collapsing bridge. The participants could claim victory immediately or risk the crystal to save them. The alien warriors hesitated. For them, survival and victory were everything. Humans, Kieran thought, had something else: empathy, strategy, and the courage to make impossible choices. "We save them," Kieran said firmly. "The crystal can wait." The team followed him, moving quickly toward the hostages. The alien warriors mocked them, certain that the humans would fail. Yet, Kieran's leadership, his ability to read the terrain and anticipate danger, allowed his team to reach the hostages safely. They guided them across the unstable bridge just as it began to collapse. By the time they returned to the crystal, the alien warriors were scattered, exhausted, and defeated. Kieran placed the crystal securely and signaled completion. The arena erupted not with cheers, but with stunned silence, quickly followed by whispers of disbelief. Commander Thalra, who had once mocked him openly, now stared with a mixture of respect and astonishment. She had underestimated humans for years, but Kieran had changed everything. The scarred human, the outcast, had proven that courage, intelligence, and resilience could surpass any physical advantage. News of Kieran's success spread rapidly across the galaxy. Humans in distant colonies celebrated, feeling a newfound pride in their kind. Aliens, who had once sneered, now reconsidered their assumptions. Kieran's name began to circulate as more than a survivor. He was becoming a symbol, a reminder that even the weakest species could rise to greatness when determination and courage guided them. That night, Kieran returned to his quarters on the station. Exhausted but alert, he examined his scars in the dim light. They were still there, jagged and imperfect, but they no longer felt like marks of shame. They were proof of what he had endured and what he had achieved. Lyra entered quietly. You did it," she said softly, awe in her voice. Kieran shook his head. "We did it. None of this would have been possible alone. Humans survive, yes, but humans lead when they inspire others to survive with them." She smiled, understanding more than words could say. The galaxy had seen a human rise, and with that rise, a new story had begun. A story of resilience, hope, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. Kieran knew this was only the beginning. The Eclipse Challenge had proven something vital, but larger challenges awaited. Across the stars, threats loomed, empires scheming, and the galaxy's greatest warriors were watching. And they would not forget the scarred human who had turned the impossible into reality. But Kieran did not fear them. He had learned that courage, intelligence, and perseverance were far more dangerous than any weapon, and as long as humans held these qualities, they could face any challenge, even those that the galaxy thought would destroy them. He touched his scars lightly, feeling the pain of memory but also the strength of survival. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new enemies, and new challenges. But tonight, he allowed himself a quiet moment of satisfaction. Humans were rising. And Kieran Voss, scarred, outcast, but unyielding, would lead the way. The galaxy had begun to notice. The galaxy was changing. The whispers of Kieran Voss, the scarred human who had survived the impossible, spread like wildfire. Humans were no longer the weak, fragile species the Confederation had believed them to be. And for many of the alien leaders, that was unacceptable. The next threat came swiftly. A rogue faction within the Confederation, jealous of Kieran's success, plotted an invasion of Eris 7. Their plan was simple: overwhelm the colony with numbers, crush human resistance, and make an example of them. But Kieran had foreseen this possibility. He had prepared quietly, gathering a force of humans, sympathetic aliens, and those inspired by his victories in the Eclipse Challenge. The orbital sensors detected hundreds of warships approaching Eris 7. Their engines blazed across the void like angry stars. Commander Thalra arrived at the command center, her expression grim. "They intend to annihilate the colony," she said. "You cannot hold them alone." Kieran studied the displays, mapping every vessel, every potential landing zone. His mind worked like a machine, calculating odds, strategies, and outcomes. "We won't hold them alone," he admitted, "but we don't need to. We will use them against themselves." Lyra, standing beside him, frowned. "There's so many, Kieran. How can humans fight that?" He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Humans have survived worse than numbers. Strategy, courage, and determination can turn even the impossible into victory. We fight smart, not just hard." The humans and their allies moved quickly, fortifying key positions around the colony and using the terrain to their advantage. Kieran divided the forces into small squads, each responsible for ambushing enemy units and controlling critical choke points. Humans, lighter and more adaptable than the heavily armored alien invaders, moved with speed and precision. The first wave of attackers landed on the volcanic plains near the colony. Massive Rylaxian soldiers stomped across the ground, their weapons firing. Kieran's team lay in wait, hidden in the jagged rocks and smoke. When the Rylaxians advanced, Kieran signaled. Explosions ripped through the air, triggered by carefully placed charges. Rocks fell, creating barriers. While humans used the confusion to strike at vulnerable points, the alien invaders had expected an easy victory, but Kieran had taught his forces to anticipate their arrogance. Every step of the battle turned the enemy's strength against them. Turrets were redirected, vehicles trapped, and elite soldiers funneled into traps. Amid the chaos, Kieran moved like a shadow, his scars visible in the fiery glow of explosions. They were no longer marks of weakness, they were symbols of survival and defiance. He led strikes, coordinated ambushes, and inspired humans and sympathetic aliens alike. His calm, strategic mind turned the tide in moments when victory seemed impossible. A squad of elite Rylaxians charged directly at him, intent on ending the legend of the scarred human. Kieran did not flinch. He drew them into a narrow canyon, where the rocky walls could serve as both weapon and shield. Using precise timing, he triggered a controlled rockslide that pinned the squad, leaving only one survivor to retreat and spread the tale of Kieran's cunning. Meanwhile, the alien fleet above attempted to bombard the colony. Kieran had anticipated this. He ordered human engineers to use the colony's energy cores to create temporary shields and decoys. Enemy fire struck false targets, wasting energy while the real defenses remained intact. The invaders were frustrated, growing reckless, and overconfident. Kieran's small team of humans and allied aliens moved from point to point, turning chaos into advantage. Every skirmish, every ambush, was a lesson in ingenuity. He reminded his team constantly, "Our strength is not in brute force alone. It is in our mind, our courage, and our will to survive." As the battle intensified, the humans began to realize the truth. They were more than what the Confederation had assumed. Even Lyra, once timid and unsure, now led her squad with confidence, directing attacks and rescuing wounded allies. Jarek, the former alien scout, used his knowledge of enemy tactics to predict strikes, earning the respect of everyone around him. But the battle was far from won. A massive Rylaxian commander, towering above the rest, landed at the heart of the colony. His armor shimmered, his weapons bristling with energy. The Confederation had brought their best, intending to crush Kieran personally. Kieran studied the battlefield. He knew a head-on attack would be suicide. Instead, he devised a bold plan. Draw the commander into a trap where his size and overconfidence would work against him. Using human agility and coordinated teamwork, Kieran's forces harried the commander, striking quickly and retreating, baiting him toward a narrow ravine filled with molten lava. The commander charged, roaring in fury, and Kieran's team sprang their trap. Explosives detonated, rocks collapsed, and the ravine's unstable walls shifted. The commander faltered, his massive form unable to adapt to the narrow, shifting terrain. With precise timing, Kieran led a final strike, using energy pulses and calculated force to disable the commander's suit. The alien fell, stunned and defeated. The remaining alien forces, seeing their champion defeated, faltered. Human squads pressed forward, rallying together with alien allies who had grown inspired by Kieran's leadership. Each victory was small, yet together they formed a wave too powerful to resist. By nightfall, the invaders were either retreating or surrendering. The colony had survived. The battle was over, but the cost was not insignificant. Buildings were damaged, some humans were injured, and scars, both physical and emotional, were everywhere. Kieran walked through the aftermath, checking on his team, ensuring no one was left behind. His own body ached, his suit damaged, but he felt a sense of pride stronger than any pain. Commander Thalra approached him, her expression uncharacteristically solemn. "I misjudged you, Kieran Voss," she said quietly. "I underestimated humanity. Today, you taught me a lesson I will never forget." Kieran nodded, though he did not smile. "It's not about me," he replied. It's about all of us. Humans can survive, adapt, and lead. And when we do, the galaxy must take notice. Across the colony, humans celebrated quietly. News of Kieran's victory spread quickly through communications, networks, and data streams. The story of the scarred human who had led the colony against impossible odds reached distant planets, inspiring hope in humans who had long felt powerless and humility in aliens who had long assumed superiority. Kieran did not rest that night. He walked to the highest point of the colony, overlooking the charred plains and distant volcanic flows. The stars were bright, endless, and full of possibility. The galaxy was larger, more dangerous, and more unpredictable than ever. But Kieran had learned something invaluable. Courage, intelligence, and determination could turn even the most desperate situation into a story of triumph. Lyra joined him, standing silently at his side. "Do you think the galaxy will change because of us?" she asked. Kieran looked at the stars. "Not yet," he said. "But they will notice. And when they do, they will remember what it means to underestimate humans." He touched his scars, feeling the familiar ache of old memories. But tonight, they felt different. They were no longer reminders of suffering, they were symbols of strength, resilience, and survival. Each one told a story, of battles fought, of allies protected, of the impossible made possible. The galaxy had seen only a glimpse of what humans could achieve. Kieran knew there would be more battles, more enemies, and more challenges. But for the first time, humans had proven they were more than survival, they were a force to be reckoned with. And at the center of it all, scarred, battered, and unyielding, Kieran Voss stood as proof. The human warrior, once mocked and underestimated, had become a symbol, a leader, and a legend in the making. The night was quiet, the lava cooled, and the stars shone brightly over Eris 7. But in the galaxy beyond, whispers had begun to spread, telling of the human who had turned the tide, faced impossible odds, and inspired all who followed him. Kieran smiled faintly, knowing that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would not forget his name. The legend of the scarred human warrior had only just begun. The galaxy would never forget the name Kieran Voss. Word of the scarred human warrior who had outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and inspired his way to victory spread from one star system to another. Humans who had long been seen as weak, fragile, and expendable now had a symbol of hope, a proof that determination, courage, and intelligence could change the course of history. Kieran stood on the balcony of the newly rebuilt command center on Eris 7, overlooking the colony he had fought to protect. The skies were clear, the stars bright, and the winds gentle. For the first time in months, he allowed himself a moment of calm. The scars on his face and arms still burned faintly from old injuries, but they were no longer marks of shame. They were proof of survival, of endurance, of everything he had overcome. Lyra, now a capable leader in her own right, approached him. Her eyes shone with admiration, but also with the quiet pride of someone who had grown under his guidance. "The humans, they're starting to believe," she said softly. "They see what you've done. What we've done." Kieran nodded. "It's not just me. Humans survive together, fight together, and inspire together. That is what the galaxy must learn." The colony had changed. Humans and alien allies worked side by side, rebuilding homes, repairing infrastructure, and sharing knowledge. Humans who had once been timid and fearful now carried themselves with confidence. The scarred warrior had not only defended their home, he had given them something more valuable: belief in themselves. Reports came in from other systems. Small colonies, previously oppressed and overlooked, began organizing defenses, inspired by Kieran's actions. Humans were no longer the species that relied solely on stronger allies for protection. They were intelligent, adaptable, and brave, a force the galaxy could no longer ignore. But recognition did not come easily. Many alien leaders resisted, unwilling to accept that humans could be equals, much less heroes. Yet Kieran had learned long ago that changing minds required action, not words. He continued training, leading missions, and demonstrating human capability in every possible way. Slowly, grudging respect turned into cautious admiration. A council of alien leaders convened on Torina Station, discussing the unprecedented human rise. Commander Thalra, now an ally, spoke on Kieran's behalf. Humans are resilient, intelligent, and courageous, she said firmly. They have survived trials designed to destroy them. We must acknowledge their strength, or we risk underestimating a species that will not forgive weakness. Kieran, standing quietly at her side, listened. He did not seek praise. He sought fairness, opportunity, and recognition for all humans. But even he could not ignore the quiet satisfaction that came with seeing the galaxy begin to shift its perception. Meanwhile, Kieran's team continued to grow. Lyra trained new recruits with skill and confidence, passing on the lessons learned under his guidance. Jarek, the former alien scout, shared tactics and knowledge, helping humans adapt to new challenges. Together, they built a force capable of defending colonies, striking against threats, and proving that humans could not only survive, but lead. Despite these victories, Kieran remained vigilant. He knew the galaxy was vast, filled with unknown dangers and ambitious adversaries, but he had learned that preparation, courage, and cleverness could turn any threat into opportunity, and he had seen firsthand that scars, whether visible or hidden, were not weaknesses. They were marks of survival, symbols of lessons learned, and reminders of what it meant to endure. One evening, as the twin suns set over the volcanic plains of Eris 7, Kieran walked through the training grounds. Young humans practiced combat maneuvers, simulations of alien tactics, and strategies for survival. They watched him with awe, inspired not only by his victories but by his leadership, resilience, and determination. A young recruit approached him nervously. "Sir, will I ever be like you?" Kieran smiled faintly. "Not exactly like me," he said. "But that's the point. Humans are not all the same. Each of you has courage, intelligence, and resilience. Learn to use them, and you will be stronger than any challenge." The recruit nodded, emboldened by his words. Kieran's impact was clear. He had transformed not only the perception of humans in the galaxy, but the confidence and capabilities of his own species. Across the colony, celebrations marked the victory, not as an end, but as a beginning. Statues of Kieran, not just his scars but his posture and determination, were placed in central squares. Children played around them, inspired to become brave, clever, and unyielding. Humans who had felt small and powerless now looked at their reflection in these statues and saw potential, not limitation. And the aliens, those who had once sneered, began to listen. They studied human tactics, intelligence, and leadership. Slowly, they began to understand what Kieran had known all along. Humans were underestimated at their peril. Kieran's legend continued to grow. Reports of his bravery reached distant sectors, inspiring humans on remote colonies and changing the way aliens perceived humanity. Not all welcomed this change, but many could not deny it. Humans had survived, fought, and led where others had failed. Yet, Kieran never let fame distract him. He continued to train, strategize, and explore. There were always new threats, new challenges, and new ways to prove that humanity was more than the galaxy expected. He knew that leadership required more than courage. It required vision, endurance, and the willingness to make difficult choices for the greater good. As the night fell over Eris 7, Kieran stood alone on the highest observation tower, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with infinite possibilities and dangers, but he felt hope, a rare, shining hope for humans, for allies, and for those willing to rise above expectations. He touched his scars lightly, feeling the stories etched into his flesh. Every battle, every failure, every moment of doubt had led him here. They were no longer symbols of suffering, they were symbols of triumph, survival, and courage. The galaxy had not yet seen the full power of humanity, but it would. Kieran Voss, scarred, outcast, yet unbroken, had forged a path for his species. The humans would rise, Not as victims, not as slaves, but as leaders, innovators, and warriors. Lyra approached him quietly, her eyes reflecting the stars. "The galaxy will remember you," she said softly. Kieran shook his head. "It's not me they will remember," he replied. "It's us, humans, and the truth that we can endure, we can rise, and we can inspire." Together, they watched the horizon. Fires from rebuilding efforts glimmered below, lights of hope and determination spreading across the colony. The galaxy beyond remained vast and unknown, but Kieran had shown one undeniable truth. Humanity could not be underestimated, ignored, or defeated. From the edges of the universe, whispers began to circulate. The scarred human warrior who had faced impossible odds, outsmarted the galaxy's greatest species, and inspired countless others was no longer a single story. He had become a legend, a symbol of resilience, courage, and the unyielding human spirit. The galaxy had learned to fear underestimating humans. And Kieran Voss, standing tall, scarred but proud, knew that the story of humanity was only beginning. The stars stretched endlessly above him, full of unknown challenges and opportunities. But for the first time, he felt certain. Humans would rise. Humans would endure. And through courage, intelligence, and unity, humans would leave a mark upon the galaxy that would never be forgotten. Kieran smiled faintly, feeling the weight of his scars and the strength they symbolized. Humanity had survived the impossible. Humanity had risen, and through his actions, the galaxy would remember them forever. The legend of the scarred human warrior was complete not as an end, but as a beginning. The story of humanity had begun, and Kieran Voss would always stand at its forefront, a living symbol of endurance, courage, and hope. The galaxy would never forget him.